before, we're talking to Bill. Um, Bill's mom was in the long-term care. Sister was taking care of mom, living in the family house. And now that mom has passed, Bill and his brother are willing that sister should get the house, and they're going to split a sum of money that's been left over, and which is much less than the equal value of the house. But sister's financial circumstances are such that she can either afford to buy the house or to buy out her brothers, and her brothers, in grateful recognition of her contributions to taking care of mom, not compensation, not compensation, because then it'd be taxable, but grateful, beneficent, gratuitous gifting type recognition, grateful recognition of her services, but not compensation one more time, because that would make it taxable, and we don't want that. To mom, are willing to let her have the house. Now, the question that am I summing that up right, Bill? Have I got that right?
Exactly. We want to make it the least financially painful for her, if at all.
Right, gotcha.
If that makes sense to you.
No, no, makes total sense. The key that I didn't touch on before was this idea that you can't do it. I mean, this is how taxes work. Okay, I was going to say it's crazy, but it's not totally crazy, really. Like if you and your brother were paying your sister for taking care of mom by giving her 50,000 each, the fact that you're giving her 50,000 worth of house instead of 50,000 cash means nothing to the IRS. It's still compensation for services, and now she owes income tax on it. So you don't want to pay her. So there's no compensation. You don't get out of this because you're compensating her. Okay. So let's say you or your brother were in bankruptcy, because you say, well, what about the? It's about the long term care also, but it's also about if there's bankruptcy, if you or your brother, or if you've been sued, or going through divorce, or any of those things where someone else is trying to get your stuff for whatever reason. The fact that you convey this to sister gratuitously, for free, and grateful recognition and all that, um, those creditors could have a beef with that. It's like you owed me money, and instead you're giving this house to your sister. Well, okay, now they can come after you for that, right? And if you say, well, no, wait a second, I was paying
Okay.
her for taking care of mom, now she owes income tax on it. Now, assuming that
Right.
nobody's about to need long-term care, nobody's going through bankruptcy, nobody's getting divorced, there are no lawsuits, all those, we're just going down, the main street of life, living our lives, everything's cool. Well, then, yeah, go ahead and give it to her, okay? And just do it, and go ahead and do it that way. But recognize that when you make a gift to somebody, if you have obligations to somebody else, that can be an issue. Also, at your age, if you've got kids in college, right? Then legally, technically, you've got to count this thing as an asset. Now, this is where trusts are your friend. Okay, if you're going through probate, all this information is public knowledge. All right, everybody know, your creditors can figure it out. That if you, let's say you were divorced and you owe child support, they have to let the friend of the court know. Oh, guess what? Bill's going to get $50,000 from the sale of this house. Oh, he gave it away. What? You see, they're not going to like that. But because it's a trust, then we don't have to report. There's no public record of it. It's just as the trustee distributes it. And sometimes people think that the confidentiality that comes from having a trust is kind of theoretical, right? It's like, well, I'm not Tom Cruise in a Mission Impossible or anything. I don't have to worry about it. Well, sometimes you should be worried about it. You should recognize that with the trust, instead of this stuff being all public, where anybody can find out what's going on, very difficult to get behind the confidentiality that's afforded by the trust. Then just one more reason. So a transaction like this, where you are doing the righteous thing, letting your sister have the house, all the rest of it, the potential for negative consequences is very, very small, because what I'm laying
That,
out for you is what the theoretical things are, right? There's a whole enforcement thing, which
right.
is, you know, most people who do this kind of thing, you wouldn't even think that it would be part of the deal. You wouldn't even think that there would be a tax consequence. You wouldn't even think there'd be a divorce, bankruptcy, lawsuit, long-term care consequence. And so you wouldn't report it naturally. But but because it's a public record, they'll find out about it and then they'll come after you later. Whereas with the trust, in all innocence, you're not reporting it. Well, you don't have to report it. See? So,
Yeah. Mom and Dad did have that set up almost 10 years ago. They had all their cars, all their accounts, and the house was in a living trust. I wasn't with the lawyer when they did it, but the
mhm.
packet that they had from the lawyer was, a Gutenberg Bible thick
Yeah, 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 yeah.
packet. So they did. So as far as I can tell, they did have it set up properly,
Yep,
and definitely everything's in a trust. And when my sister was even writing checks at the funeral home recently, it was the trust. So
sure.
that was that was all done properly as far as I can tell. And yeah, I just like I said, I wanted this. It was the fact of, I guess, essentially changing the terms of the will, post, posthumously, is that we're supposed to be split up, but it sounds like you're saying then it just comes back around. We're just gifting her back our portion, part of our portion, essentially.
Yeah, but you're not taking it first and then giving it back. You're just giving up your claim to it. Now, there's a process for doing this called um, an agreement to alter shares. In the agreement to alter shares is where you're entitled to something and you go through the process. Um, but now you're making a public record out of it. See, there's a lot of stuff that you can do, um, ways you're supposed to do it, but where everybody agrees, and this is the one thing I would make sure of, is that the three of you all agree to this disposition, so that later on somebody can't come back and say, "Oh, Bill didn't know what he was doing. He thought the house was worth 60 or
Sure.
50, and he was just getting his equal share." So the problem
Right.
is not the three of you. The problem is who might stand in your shoes to complain about stuff, right?
Right.
So
Whatever.
yeah, but I would definitely do
Okay.
I would not do necessarily the agreement to alter shares. What I would do is what we call a receipt and release, saying I got this much money. I'm completely satisfied that I got everything I was supposed to get out of the estate. I know that sister's getting the house. I know the brother's getting the same amount of money I am. Just have everybody sign off, and then that way, some niece or nephew or somebody later on can't come back and raise a stink, you know. And that's more for sister's benefit,
Yeah,
obviously,
she's been
than
dealing
yours.
with an estate. Yeah, she's been dealing with the same estate attorney for trying to do a Medicare spend down or a Medicaid spend down for mom.
Hmm.
So we're going to use the same attorney to settle her estate. So I'm sure he's familiar with what you're talking about. Um, we're over on the east side of the state, or he is.
Mm.
My sister is. So, but I appreciate that. Gives me a lot of guidance and headway. And I thought there was a way to do it, and I knew you'd be the guy to how to do it. So
Well, let me just say this about spend down, okay? Um, well, there's what, 50,000 left, 40,000 left, something like that.
I don't even know the numbers. I was using those as round numbers,
Okay,
just
gotcha, gotcha,
for
gotcha.
example.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm not gonna make you unhappy with the guy. I mean, there's all kinds of factors I don't know about. But if you go to somebody for Medicaid and they're having you spend down, it's like, like pay money to the long-term care facility until the money's all gone. It's like you can save about half of the cash. So if you have 100,000, you
Yeah.
figure you can save 50. And you don't. It's not a
Right.
spend down that you're doing. I mean, spend down can be part of it, but so. But
To be
okay.
fair, we never got to that